6:35, morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
You won't believe what we've just been talking about. Actually, you would never believe what we talk about during the breaks. But we've been talking about dogs and cats because you are...
We're getting a dog.
You're getting a little dog. Well, it will start little, but it's going to get big. Yeah, because it's going to... It's
a ridgeback, or a decent ridgeback, so it'll end up like...
Yeah.
That's not going to be little.
So the question was, how do you introduce it to Timmy?
Yes.
And what's Timmy going to think? Because Timmy's the cat who's been there years.
Yeah, well, apparently fine. If you introduce them to a dog, a ridgeback at least when they're a puppy, they're fine. They're fine. So Timmy will have to get used to it, but the dog will be fine.
Yeah.
But the ridgebacks are very good with cats that they grow up with.
Yeah. So we were wondering, if you've got a cat and a dog, how do they get on? Do they automatically get on, or do they just leave each other well alone?
Or do they cuddle up together? That's what we like. Pictures of them sleeping together and all that.
Send us your pictures, please. GBNEWS@GBNews.com.
Now, the Mail on Sunday's splash this morning reads, Woke Met ban badge tribute to fallen officers. Now, that's police being banned from wearing a blue Union Jack symbol because the bosses claim it's anti-trans.
Oh, for heaven's sake. The Sunday Express reports on taxpayer cash being used to fund open borders activists. The headline there, Rwanda scheme foiled by £1.5 billion of your money.
Daily Star Sunday, boozed up hornets on the rampage.
That's the one that worries me.
Oh, Britain is facing an invasion of alcoholic Asian hornets. Yeah,
Hornets are bad enough, but if they're boozed up, that's even worse.
I wouldn't worry too much,
No?
to be honest.
Front page of the Times has a picture of a French waiter putting out a fire during the ongoing riots there.
He's doing it in a very calm manner.
He does look very calm.
On the Sunday Telegraph, George gets a slice of the action at Lord's. There he is eating pizza along with his dad and the Prime Minister.
Should we go through what else is in the papers today? Let's, with the editor of Spike, Tom Slater, and political consultant Emma Burnell. And it's lovely to see you both.
Hello.
You've got a cat or a dog?
I've got a cat who looks very like Timmy, actually, but she's a girl.
Right, but you haven't got a dog as well?
No, but both my parents and my sister have good dogs that I regularly go out for walks with.
So does the cat know them?
No, they're not allowed in my flat because it's Smudge's flat, really.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cats for you. What about you?
I've neither, unfortunately.
Neither?
No,
Okay. No, it's far too much trouble. Yeah.
I had
Yeah,
both growing up.
Yeah.
My mother went through a very, very brief Earth Mother phase, during which we acquired 4 cats and 2 dogs.
Oh, right.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
See, I wonder whether my little Ellie would actually like a cat for company. Because it wouldn't be so... It wouldn't be a problem for me. The cat would be... No, I don't mind the cat being in charge.
Ellie might, though.
She might, yeah.
We'll see.
It's a thought.
Cats are always in charge.
Plus, the other moan that I was having during the break is that Ellie is white. And she goes out for a walk and comes back green if they've just been mowing the lawn, mowing the grass on the common, or just filthy, filthy muddy. And so nobody ever told me, particularly if you get a white dog, you spend half your time washing her.
Yeah. So what else have you got to do?
Well, exactly. Yeah. And the trouble is, bathing her, she's very good. She will be bathed, but I end up soaked as well because every so often she just shakes. It goes everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, well, there you go.
If you've got any pet problems, get in touch.
Tom, let's have a look at the Mail on Sunday. What is this deal with this badge that police want to wear to their fallen officers that they now can't?
Yeah, I mean, this is a ridiculous story. I mean, this badge is referred to generally as the thin blue line. People might have seen police officers wearing it, this black and white Union flag with the thin blue line going through, excuse me. And many people might not even realise what that's in reference to, but as you were saying, is about fallen officers and so on. But the police who were policing Pride yesterday in London in particular were told not to wear it because of this claim that it's anti-trans.
Why would it be anti-trans?
There's a lot of dot connecting going on here, so bear with me. But essentially, in America, there was a movement following the Black Lives Matter movement called the Blue Lives Matter movement, which had a very similar symbol. That then got hijacked apparently by some far-right groups or whatever, but that wasn't even the original meaning of it. As a consequence of that, it's seen as just hateful and bigoted in general by some people. What I think most
grates about... It's Union flag in blue.
Also, I refuse to believe that this was the consequence of a group of pride organisers, gay people, trans people, whatever, getting together and say we're really upset by this. I'm sure this is another case, which always happens, of someone taking offence on behalf of someone else.
Yeah.
And then as a consequence of that, you get ridiculous stories like this, and you get a lot of people within the police force naturally very irritated.
Well, the
they think,
police
why,
are very irritated.
what's wrong with this?
And actually, the problem is it then generates anti-gay and anti-trans sentiment, which wouldn't necessarily otherwise be there and shouldn't be there. I can't imagine anyone objecting to that.
It would be fun to find out who actually raised the objection in the first place.
And it's often, if it's anyone at all, it's one or two people who are just taken overly seriously, and as a result you end up, tarring everyone with one brush. It's ridiculous.
Well, and it's also, and we see this on both sides, left and right, and the more extreme ends of both, that importation of American politics and trying to fit it to British politics when it actually doesn't. There are very, very different issues. So, for example, the bills that are happening in the United States in various Republican-led areas are really quite sort of viciously anti-trans, viciously anti-LGBT rights. Whereas over here, the debate's a lot more subtle, a lot more nuanced, and in fact not as clearly left-right divided either. So it's really, it just, as Tom said, there were so many jumps that you had to take from this is a badge about some police officers who've been killed on duty in the UK with a UK flag on it and a blue line, to, oh, it might look a little bit like something that they wear in the States, which might also then have different connotations. And it's like, stop importing your morality from the United States and start thinking about how these things work here and in our own political
It's not as if the thin blue line is a new concept over here, is it?
Well, I think someone should tell Ben Elton, because he wrote that 20 years ago.
Exactly.
Brilliant show, that.
Right, Emma, if we go to the Sunday Express, this big fight against the Rwanda scheme is being funded by you and me.
Well, again, there's been some dots being drawn here, because actually, if you read the story, some of the organisations they're talking about include the UNHCR, which is not one of the participants in this court case. It has a view on the Rwanda scheme as to whether it's workable, right, and has every right to that view. But that's not what it's being funded for. It's being funded, it will be running schemes that help the UK to manage different things around migrants and asylum, because that's its job.
So basically the story is saying that £1.5 billion is going to groups who oppose the asylum seekers to Rwanda scheme.
Yes.
And so it's taxpayers' money, and that's their...
Some of it's taxpayers' money, some of it's National Lottery money, so it's not even all coming directly from government grants.
National Lottery money's going to that, is it?
Well, not, I don't think to the UNHCR, but to Refugee Council, I think, is one of them. So there are charities that are there to help with refugee issues who will take a view on this.
You don't want to defund the Refugee Council.
Exactly.
They do a lot of good work.
So again, this is a lot of overreach, I think, in terms of, linking it directly to the court cases against Rwanda.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, it's good to have that explained. To the Sunday Telegraph, Tom, pylons. Apparently, I didn't know people still objected to pylons, because I know they're ugly, but they are everywhere and have been for decades.
Yeah, and they are necessary. I mean, I suppose this story is tying into the question about how do you get to net zero. So this is obviously something that the government is committed to, the Labour government are committed to it, even on a faster timetable. But there's all these questions about if we're going to switch to electric cars, for instance, we're going to need more electricity than we do currently. We're going to need more infrastructure to transport it. They've worked out that between now and 2040, we need to be able to generate. We're generating 14 gigawatts of energy from offshore wind at the moment. They want that to go up to 50. That's just one measure. And so there's been discussion around how are we going to build the infrastructures to support this. The discussions inside government around essentially loosening up planning rules so that you could overcome local objections to these kinds of things very quickly.
That's what I was thinking.
We have these, they call them moles now, don't they? That set off and they dig and they drag all the cables through.
Because pylons are, it's a shame that we're still in the business of building pylons, isn't it?
I mean, in so many different ways, you do feel like the infrastructure in general is creaking in so many different ways. I mean, I think net zero is a complete mistake, particularly in the current climate that we find ourselves in, so to speak, in terms of sky-high energy prices and all the rest of it. But we do need to plough channel resources into infrastructure, into energy production. I would just rather it was things like nuclear rather than things like offshore wind. But I think there is that problem with the fact that, you know, you do have to find a way of getting past these objections, because whatever path we choose to take in terms of building up this country in terms of energy and whatever, that will take building things.
Yeah,
and how do you get around that?
Much less pushback on a nuclear power plant than you would against an electricity pylon.
And that's the big problem that the Tories never managed to get around, whether it's in terms of questions like energy infrastructure, whether it's in terms of like just house building. Like, how do you bring people with you?
Yeah.
So it's not being imposed upon them, but at the same time you manage to
as you say,
overcome that sort of
people don't want nuclear power stations. So the alternative is let's build a few windmills. It's not one extreme to the other. Yeah. They don't want those either, and they don't want.
No, we don't want pylons.
No, and we say we don't want pylons, but our steel industry would be like crying out in gratitude for us increasing from 40 to 50%. Yeah, I think that's gigawatts rather. I think there are lots of places that will really benefit from. Us going for net zero in this way, investing in bringing that into the UK industry and reindustrialising a lot of the UK, remanufacturing. If you look at what Biden's done in America, it's been, instead of focusing on the kind of the green message, it's about American jobs. And I think the same thing can happen.
That's a different way
here.
of looking at it entirely.
Exactly. They put it through all of these measures to completely change America's infrastructure and energy mix, and called it the Inflation Reduction Act, and made it about jobs. And it's and their inflation has gone down. Unfortunately, ours less so.
It's a good spin to put on it. If you make it all about British jobs, and suddenly you get people behind.
Well, you really would. It would change people's mind.
Emma, Happy Russia Day.
Yes. It seems that some people were celebrating Russia Day in ways that you wouldn't expect them to.
There was a Russia
I didn't
Day.
know there was a Russia Day.
Russia Day is big in Russia, surprisingly. And I believe it's a celebration of the establishment of the modern Russian state.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
So it's there was a party held by Putin's envoy to the UK, who is banned from the Westminster estate, and this party was attended by two Conservative peers, Lord Skidelsky and Lord Balfe.
Why would they think that's a good idea under the current circumstances?
I mean, you tell me, Stephen, because I can't see any justification. There are, I am sure, ways that we need to keep talking to these people, but going to a party for Russia Day just seems so tone deaf to me.
Yeah, no one's going to criticise them for going and having a meeting with the ambassador. Yeah. That's all well and good, but going
champagne and canapes, ain't it?
Yeah, well, it'd be vodka and canapes. No, I mean, it just seems utterly bonkers.
Well, I suppose I agree, but I think to play devil's advocate, you imagine that up until the war, as you were suggesting, people were still maintaining links, they were still going to these dues, personal relationships do build up even with governments and individuals whose politics you might not share and so on, so maybe there was something like that, but the fact it was only two, I think, probably indicates that maybe it was just a pretty bad lapse in judgment.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but I'm washing my hair that night, that's all you need to say. You don't have to be rude about not going, you just have to not go.
Yeah.
It is, as you say, tone deaf, isn't it?
Yeah.
They just don't get it.
Actually, we're almost out of time. I know, Emma, this is one you've picked, but I'll throw it at Tom, just because he looks like he may be a bit of a boozer. Daily Star Sunday, Tom.
Yes.
When you're out having a pint in a pub this afternoon, which I'm sure you will be, are you worried about drunken Asian hornets?
I am now. So as far as I understand it, these drunken Asian hornets are marauding around Britain. They particularly like beer and bubbly. They're getting drunk on it, presumably, by the sounds of it. And I don't know if that makes them more vigorous or violent. But either way, if you hear that buzz, run a mile from wherever you are.
How do you know if you've seen a hornet?
Because they're ginormous.
But we were learning about horseflies being enormous.
Horseflies are quite, compared to other things that bite you in the same way, horseflies are significantly bigger. But hornets, you can tell the difference between a hornet and a wasp.
Well, in that case, I don't think I've ever seen one.
I've seen them not in this country. I mean, It's quite interesting. Maybe we have an exchange, because the last time I was in Asia, the thing that you had to worry about was drunken British tourists. So maybe we're just swapping.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Well, if you've spotted a hornet anywhere, particularly a drunk one,
Take a picture of it and send it to us.
yes, let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com. Thank you both. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
Thank you.